Welcome to our webinar designed to share an approach a district might take in the conversion of rubrics to teacher evaluation scores. To begin the discussion, let's clarify which rubric we are using. Using the 2011 Danielson rubric with 22 criteria, we will look at how to convert the 4 levels, unsatisfactory, basic, proficient, and distinguished, with the highest rating receiving a 4 and the lowest receiving a 1, into a 0 to 60 point distribution. Providing the foundation for this work, creating and recognizing quality rubrics by Arter and WSWHE illustrates this process for classroom rubrics. The same approach will be applied to the teacher evaluation rubric conversion process in this webinar. First, let's look at 2 teachers' hypothetical ratings on the evaluation rubric. Without doing any calculations, take about 30 seconds to determine how each teacher might be rated using the HEIDI categories: highly effective, effective, developing, or ineffective. Have you circled one for each? Ready? Time's up. I'm going to venture a guess and say many of you selected Teacher A as effective and Teacher B as developing, although some of you might rate Teacher B as effective since that teacher had more 3 ratings than 2 ratings. So how do we convert these ratings into points? Let's take a look at the wrong way first, where we consider a level 1 to be a 25, level 2 to be a 50, level 3 to be a 75, and level 4 to be 100. If we add them up and divide by 22, we get 78.4. But in this approach, there are 2 levels that are, so to speak, failing, providing more emphasis toward the low end of the scale. As per the Arter and WSWHE book, if we were to look at the descriptors for the level 2 categories, they do not describe failing performance of teachers in the classroom. Some districts may be interested in weighting the sections of the rubric related to what is documented in classroom observations. For this approach, sections 2 and 3 are counted twice, and the number of criteria will increase from 22 to 32. With this approach, Teacher A receives a rating of 79.7. Earlier, we established that Teacher B has a few more 3 ratings than 2 ratings. When we calculate the teacher score using this approach, we get a 63.6. Weighting sections 2 and 3 for this teacher, we get a 65.6. For these teachers, while Teacher A has a rating that might be deemed effective using the current composite score ranges, this teacher is at the low end of the range, even though many ratings were 3 or 4. Teacher B looks to be receiving ratings lower than our intended ratings of developing or even effective, given the number of 3 ratings. Let's take a look at the approach recommended by Arter and WSWHE for these same teachers. In this approach, the rubric ratings stay in their original format. 1s are 1s, 2s are 2s, etc. Then we add them up and divide by the number of criteria to get an average rubric score of 3.14 for this teacher. Weighting sections 2 and 3 for Teacher A, the teacher's score would be a 3.19. For Teacher B using this approach, the average rubric score would be 2.55. Weighting sections 2 and 3 for Teacher B, the average rubric score would be 2.63. So what do these average rubric scores mean? We need a logic rule. This logic rule was created dividing up the 0 to 60 points across possible average rubric scores, given a range of average rubric scores from a low of 1 to a high of 4. The average rubric score ranges fit well into this distribution, with 5 average rubric scores per point value. So you don't have to be a 4 on each of the 22 criteria to get the full points. To organize the chart into 4 possible categories, highly effective, effective, developing, and ineffective, we looked at the possible combination of performance using 22 criteria weighted equally. If a weighting approach is used, these could be modified. In this example, if one has half of the criteria in level 4 and half in level 3, they would be effective until the balance shifted to more 4s than 3s. So to move from ineffective to developing, from developing to effective, and from effective to highly effective, it is suggested that, theoretically, one would need to have more ratings in the higher category. Please note, the state is not necessarily looking for districts to report the HIDE category for the rubric, just the points, and then those points would contribute to a composite score that leads to an overall HIDE category. Revisiting the teacher ratings and using the color coding as guidelines for highly effective, effective, developing, and ineffective, the point values attributed reflect the intended ratings better. If the teacher's composite scores were generated using the current New York State Education Department ranges, then teacher A would be deemed effective in this example, and teacher B would be deemed developing in this example. In sum, this general approach is a suggestion for use in rubric conversion for the teacher evaluation rubrics, whichever one is chosen, as well as for classroom rubrics needing grade conversion. For additional guidance, please see Arter and Chapwis or contact the Data Analysis Services Office. Lastly, this approach reflects our intentions for the rubric and what we want to be able to say about teacher performance. Therefore, we encourage you to discuss this approach and how it would look in your district as you move forward on your APPR requirements. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to assisting you in the future.